All right, in our spotlight, some turmoil at the CDC. Director Susan Menares says she's not stepping down. This is after the White House announced her firing just weeks after being sworn in. The White House says that this comes after a tense conversation that Menares had with Health Secretary Kennedy on changes to vaccine policy. The White House is saying that she is, quote, not aligned with the president's agenda of making America healthy again. Lawyers representing the CDC director say that she's being targeted because she chose, quote, protecting the public over serving a political agenda. Now, 4 other senior career officials at the agency say that they resigned in protest. And this afternoon, CDC staff staged a walkout in support of the employees who left their positions. I want to bring in my panel here, ABC News contributor and National Review editor Ramesh Ponnuru, former senior political advisor in the Biden administration John McCarthy, former GOP national spokesperson Elizabeth Pipko, and independent journalist and attorney Aaron Parnas. Thank you all for being here with us. So first of all, Ramesh, just your general reaction here to the upheaval that we are seeing at the CDC.
Well, it is very reminiscent of first-term Trump in that, the White House is saying that the CDC director doesn't reflect administration policy. Well, it is the CDC director. She is the CDC director that the White House nominated, that Trump nominated not that long ago, and now is disavowing. The other big picture here is that, look, Kennedy has a career-long record of doing everything he can to sabotage vaccines, not particularly caring about factual accuracy, being willing to make up all kinds of stories about them. Nobody, including the senators who confirmed him, should be surprised by anything he's been doing.
And so he's been doing, as in Secretary Kennedy's, because I think that that's interesting, John, because as Ramesh points out here, this is who President Trump nominated.
Yeah, and that the Republicans in the Senate voted for. And the Secretary Kennedy himself swore the director in and said that they had their full confidence. So this should not be a surprise to anyone. But, I'll say this. I worked previously in the White House and in the Congress, and I try to not be someone who's overly inflammatory, but this is something that should make people nervous. And the reason is because we have an independent, agency here. We have career civil servants who aren't there to be aligned with any administration. They're not there to play politics. They're there to care about public safety. The reason we have this is that these are decisions that should be led by science, not by career political hacks. So the fact that we're stepping over this norm in governance is something that should give a lot of Americans some pause.
Well, Elizabeth, what's your understanding, I guess, of how this all played out? Because were the president and Secretary Kennedy aligned initially on her nomination? And then was it this sort of one disagreement that she had with Secretary Kennedy that forced her out, or is there more there?
No, I think that's the only real question there is here for those that are curious about what's going on, because the fact is we can, complain all we want about Secretary Kennedy, but that's who was chosen. That's who was chosen by the duly elected president of the United States. And obviously, if you want to choose someone else, then you can win an election in 4 years and choose somebody else. So I think the only question really is, why is this happening the way that it is? People are obviously curious why someone was chosen, sworn in, and now is being fired. I think it was a month later. So I think that's the only real question. I wasn't in the room. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm sure it's not the first time in an administration that someone is brought in and then they find out that their views do not align. So I'm brought back to where I have been many times on this show and many others. Are we talking about this because it's Donald Trump in the White House and that makes it a bigger story than it is? Or are we just talking about it because it actually matters? And I'm pretty sure many times in many administrations, people come in, realize there's a difference of opinion, and they find somebody else. I'm not really sure how big the story truly would have been if it was under anybody else's administration or anybody else's HHS department.
Can you think of a precedent? Can you think of another CDC director who lasted a month from another president? It'd be interesting to find an example.
Off the top of my head, no, but I guarantee you I can Google this after the show and find a lot of people that didn't last more than a couple weeks over Joe Biden's term in office, and no one talked about it on this show or any others, I guarantee you.
Well, and I think even her...
You're saying that this is a question that, maybe relates to Donald Trump, but the question here is also one that should be asked of the Republican senators who confirmed the director. And the real question at hand shouldn't be about, is this a bigger issue because of who the president is? It's about, you put in and confirmed a conspiracy theorist to lead the department. And, what else did you expect was going to happen?
Well, again, even her nomination was contentious, but then now you see the people walking out now that she's fired, when it seemed like there wasn't a lot of support there for her in the first place. But also, I want to pass along to you guys, and I want Aaron to be able to weigh in here. This was just handed to me that they've tapped an interim director. His name is Jim O'Neill. This was first reported by the Washington Post, but he's been Kennedy's deputy for the past 3 months. He served under President George W. Bush as well and worked on food safety regulations specifically. So again, passing that along to you, Aaron, Jim O'Neill is tapped as interim director of the CDC.
I mean, I'm not surprised. I think that they want people who support their vision, their agenda. I mean, listen, here's the thing. The president of the United States is fully entitled to nominate whoever he wants for whatever position. But I think it is telling to see the massive protests outside of the CDC headquarters today. The staff members literally walking out. These are career staff members. These aren't political appointees walking out. And it raises a different concern for me. This is now a pattern, right? You had Donald Trump questioning economic statistics and then firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he thought that was wrong just a month ago. And now they're firing a public health expert who they nominated and they supported, maybe because they just don't believe in her vision of science. But her vision of science may actually just be science. And here's the thing, Elizabeth is right. I mean, there are plenty of people who don't last longer than a month, but the reason why they don't last longer than a month is not because of internal disagreements over vaccine policy, but rather because they have some kind of scandal when they were nominated. That's why they don't last. People leave all the time because they were caught with a lawsuit or whatever, not just because they don't disagree on policy.
Well, I do, before we go, just want to leave you with the fact that O'Neill in the past has said he supports vaccines, but not government mandates for vaccines. So we will continue to unpack this and talk about it. I appreciate all of you, Ramesh, John, Elizabeth, and Aaron. Don't go anywhere. We have more to talk about in our last call here. It's a plot, many twists.